At 12:43 a.m. sign. My phone buzzed. The glow cut through the dark of my Seattle bedroom. I had been asleep, dreaming of nothing in particular. The kind of quiet sleep you get when your life is finally in order. Then the screen lit up. My eyes had to adjust. I squinted at the message. It was from my parents. Both of them. A group text, as they often did. The words hit me like a physical blow. Sweetheart, your sister Olivia has everything perfectly planned. It's best if you don't come. I stared at the text. My breath caught in my throat. The words didn't make sense. My brain tried to process them. Don't come to Thanksgiving. It's best if you don't come. My own home. The one I had saved. The house I had worked for. Sacrificed for. The house where I'd spent every Thanksgiving of my life. I felt a cold wave wash over me. It wasn't just confusion. It was disbelief. It was a sharp, piercing pain. Just 6 months earlier, I had paid off their $520,000 mortgage. Every single penny. I had emptied my life savings for them. I had given up my future plans. All to save their house. My childhood home from foreclosure. And now they were telling me not to come to Thanksgiving because Olivia had everything perfectly planned. The phone felt heavy in my hand. The light from the screen reflected in my eyes. I felt a knot form in my stomach. It twisted tight. This wasn't just a text. It was a dismissal. It was a slap in the face. It was everything I had always feared. I made real. The hurt was immediate and deep. I closed my eyes. I could still see the words. It's best if you don't come. I felt like I was suffocating in my own room. In my own bed. All because of a few words on a screen. My heart ached. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. After everything. After all I had done. This was the thanks I got. My sister, Olivia Mason, was always the golden child. The charming younger sister. She could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. It didn't matter what she did. She was always excused. Always. I remember when she quit law school. She'd gone for maybe a year and a half. Then she decided it wasn't for her. My parents just sighed. Oh, Olivia, Mom would say. A fond little shake of her head, always following her heart. There was no anger, no disappointment, just a gentle understanding. It was like a little adventure she was on. Meanwhile, the student loans started piling up. Tens of thousands of dollars. Money she had no way of paying back. But my parents didn't pressure her. They just quietly helped her out. They paid the minimums. They told me not to worry about it. She'll figure it out, Dad would say, waving his hand. Olivia always lands on her feet. I was 2 years older than Olivia. I was the one who went to college, got good grades, and landed a job in tech right out of school. I didn't have a rich uncle. I didn't have a trust fund. I had student loans, too. But I paid mine every month on time. I worked hard. I saved every extra dollar for 15 years. That was my life. Grind. Work. Save. Discipline. Frugal. Those were the words I lived by. I bought a small condo. I invested in my 401k. I had a brokerage account. I even bought a small rental property, hoping it would be my nest egg. I planned for the future. I planned for retirement. I planned for stability. Olivia, on the other hand, just floated. She bounced from one thing to another. An influencer phase that didn't quite take off. A brief stint in real estate that barely lasted 6 months. She lived in a trendy apartment downtown. Always had the latest designer bags and went on exotic trips. Who paid for it? My parents. Of course. I'd bring it up sometimes. Gently. Are you worried about Olivia's spending? I'd ask Mom. Oh. Claire. She's young. She's finding herself. Mom would say as if I was being judgmental. You were always so serious. Olivia just enjoys life. Serious. That was my label. I wasn't fun. I wasn't spontaneous. I wasn't charming like Olivia. I was serious. I was responsible. I was the one who could be counted on. But never the one who was truly seen or loved in the same way. Olivia was still the star. The one Mom and Dad adored. Their little free spirit. Their special girl. No matter how many times I stepped up. No matter how many times I put my own life on hold for them. It was Olivia who got the praise. It was Olivia who got the attention. It was Olivia who they excused time and time again. I remember one Christmas. I had just gotten a big promotion. I was so excited to tell them. I bought Mom a really nice cashmere scarf and Dad a new watch. Olivia had just started her handmade jewelry business, which mostly involved buying cheap beads and gluing them together. Her gift to Mom was a crooked necklace. Her gift to Dad was a promise to make him a custom keychain. When I told them about my promotion, Dad just nodded. That's nice. Honey. Good for you. Mom barely looked up from opening Olivia's necklace. Oh. Olivia. This is just darling. You made this yourself? She cooed. Olivia beamed. It's one of a kind. Mom. I felt a familiar ache in my chest. It was a familiar feeling. Like being invisible? Like my achievements were just expected. While Olivia's smallest gesture was celebrated, it wasn't that I wanted praise. Not really. I just wanted to be seen. To be loved for who I was. Not for what I could do for them. But with Olivia around, I was always just Claire. The responsible one. The serious one. The one who didn't need anything because she had her life together. Olivia, on the other hand, always needed something. And my parents were always there to provide it with open arms, with open wallets. It felt like a competition I could never win because the rules were rigged. I couldn't be Olivia, and Olivia couldn't be me. And my parents only ever wanted Olivia. This dynamic had been the background music of my entire life. Olivia's whims, Olivia's needs, Olivia's endless charm, and my quiet, steady efforts. Always in the shadows, always taken for granted, always just there. It made the Thanksgiving text sting even more. It wasn't just about the holiday. It was about everything. The years of feeling second best. The years of being the backup plan. The years of being the one who cleaned up the mess, only to be told to step aside for the person who made it. This was Olivia's moment, and I was in the way again. The phone call came late one Tuesday evening. My mom was crying hysterically. It was hard to understand her at first. Claire, it's the house," she wailed. My heart immediately dropped. I knew what she meant. They'd been struggling with the mortgage payments for a while. Dad had lost his job a few years back, an accounting firm he'd worked at for decades. He tried to start his own, but it never really took off. And Mom's part-time work wasn't enough to cover their lifestyle, especially with Olivia's constant emergencies. "What about the house, Mom?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "The bank. They sent papers. Foreclosure. They're going to take it. Claire. Our home." Her voice was ragged, full of terror. My childhood home. The beautiful lakefront house with the big oak tree in the front yard. The house where I'd celebrated birthdays, where I'd cried over boyfriends, where I'd dreamt of my future. It was more than just a house. It was where my memories lived. It was a symbol of our family, even if that family was sometimes complicated. I knew deep down that this moment would come. I had seen the warning signs, the skipped payments, the credit card debt piling up. But I had hoped it wouldn't. I had hoped they would figure it out. "How much, Mom?" I asked. My voice felt hollow. She gave me a number, a staggering number. Over $500,000. The remaining mortgage, plus all the fees and penalties. My stomach churned. This wasn't just a small loan. This was my entire future. My security. Everything I had worked for. I hung up with Mom, my mind racing. I called Dad. He confirmed it, his voice defeated. "We just don't have it, Claire. We've tried everything." I could hear the desperation in his tone, the shame. Olivia, of course, was nowhere to be found in this crisis. She was off on a spiritual retreat in Sedona, funded by a credit card my parents had given her for emergencies. This apparently wasn't her emergency. I spent the next few days in a fog. My work suffered. My sleep was non-existent. I ran the numbers over and over again. My brokerage account, my savings, My rental property. I had options. I could let the house go. It wasn't my house. Technically. My name wasn't on the deed. I could walk away. Protect my own future. And let them face the consequences of their choices. It would hurt. It would be painful. But it would keep me safe. It would keep my future secure. But I couldn't. The thought of them losing their home, of seeing my parents, who were getting older, stripped of everything, haunted me. The lakefront house had been their dream. It had been our dream in a way. I couldn't imagine it gone. I couldn't imagine them without that stability. And I felt in a way I always had that it was my responsibility. I was the capable one. The responsible one. The one who fixed things always. So I made the call. A series of calls, actually. First to my financial advisor. I told her I needed to liquidate everything. My brokerage account. Every stock. Every bond. She looked at me over Zoom with concern. Claire, are you sure about this? This is a significant portion of your retirement. I'm sure, I said, my voice tight. My parents need help. Next to the real estate agent. My rental property. A steady income stream. A long-term investment. I put it on the market. It sold quickly. Thankfully. In a hot market. But it was still a sacrifice. A piece of my security gone. It felt like I was tearing off pieces of myself. Each transaction, each wire transfer, each signature felt like a fresh wound. I watched the numbers in my bank accounts dwindle from robust, healthy figures to bare minimums. My future, meticulously built over 15 years, was suddenly just on emptied. The day the final payment went through, my parents called me separately this time. Mom was weeping again. But this time it was tears of relief. Oh, Claire. My rock. My angel. You saved us. You saved our home. Her voice was choked with emotion. We don't know what we would do without you. You're our only hope. Dad was quieter. More subdued. Claire. I don't know how to thank you. You've sacrificed so much. We'll never forget this. Never. He sounded genuinely grateful. Truly. In that moment, a tiny part of me felt a flicker of warmth. Maybe this was it. Maybe this enormous sacrifice, this complete emptying of my resources would finally show them how much I loved them, how much I cared. Maybe this would finally make them see me, not just as a resource, but as their daughter, equally loved, equally cherished as Olivia. They called me their rock, their savior, their only hope. I held on to those words. I clung to them. They were all I had left besides the empty bank accounts. I told myself it was worth it for them. For our family. For the dream of a future where I was finally truly valued. 6 months later, my phone buzzed at 12:43 a.m. Sweetheart, your sister Olivia has everything perfectly planned. It's best if you don't come. The words shattered the fragile hope I had built. They didn't remember or they didn't care. They were disinviting me so Olivia could host her boss. The rock. The angel. The savior. Suddenly, I was just an inconvenience. They had no idea. My parents, Olivia, they had no idea what I had been quietly doing for years. While they were busy living their lives, assuming I would always be there to pick up the pieces, I was gathering information. Not because I was vindictive. Not at first. Anyway, it was more out of a quiet, growing sense of self-preservation. A need to understand the pattern. To protect myself just in case. It started subtly. Little things. Screenshots of texts where Olivia would casually mention needing a little help with rent. Only for my parents to send her thousands. I'd save them. Just a quick capture. A habit. Like taking notes in a meeting. Then came the bank transfers. My parents sending money to Olivia's account. Small amounts at first. Then larger ones. For business expenses that never seemed to result. In a viable business. For apartment improvements. For medical emergencies that magically resolved themselves when the money landed. I had access to their shared bank account for emergencies like when they needed me to pay a bill. So, I saw everything. Every transaction. I meticulously copied the details. Dates. Amounts. Descriptions. There were the credit cards. My parents had added Olivia as an authorized user on several of their cards. Just for emergencies. A mom had insisted. But the statements told a different story. Designer clothes. Expensive meals. Weekend getaways. All on my parents' dime. I downloaded every statement month after month. The evidence was damning. Line after line of Olivia's lavish spending paid for by the very parents who were always telling me they were struggling. The forged applications. That was a big one. Olivia had once tried to get a small business loan. She'd exaggerated her income. Fabricated client testimonials. My parents, in their naive desire to help her, had co-signed without truly scrutinizing the paperwork. I got a copy of the application. The lies jumped off the page. It wasn't just Olivia's irresponsibility. It was a pattern of deliberate deception. And my parents, bless their hearts, were either too blind or too unwilling to see it. I saved everything in a dedicated folder on my encrypted hard drive and backed up on a cloud service. It was my secret library. My quiet collection of all the times they had chosen Olivia over me. All the times they had enabled her at their own expense and mine. I wasn't a detective. I was just paying attention. Seeing the truth for what it was. Even when they refused to. And then there was the house. My house now. After I had paid off their mortgage, I hadn't just wired the money and walked away. I had involved my lawyer. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Olivia. It was a strategic move. A protective measure. I Needed to ensure that my monumental sacrifice wasn't just a bottomless pit for them to fall into again. My lawyer drew up the papers. They were clear. Ironclad. I wasn't just paying off their mortgage. I was buying the house from them at fair market value. The outstanding mortgage amount. And then I was leasing it back to them for a nominal fee with a clear understanding that it was still my property. The deed was officially transferred into my name. The legal ownership papers were signed, sealed, and delivered. I remembered sitting in my lawyer's office, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Relief that I had protected my investment. A cold, hard edge of resolve. And a deep, quiet sadness that it had come to this. That I couldn't just trust my family. That I had to formalize everything legally just to protect myself. I signed the papers. The ink felt permanent. Definitive. I was now the sole legal owner of the lakefront house. The poor house where I'd grown up. The house they had just disinvited me from for Thanksgiving. My parents, in their rush of relief and gratitude, hadn't paid close attention to the details. Or perhaps they simply didn't understand the legal implications. They just saw the mortgage paid off, the foreclosure averted. They saw their rock saving them. They didn't see the shift in ownership. They didn't see the power dynamic quietly but irrevocably changing. Those legal ownership papers, they weren't just on my hard drive. They weren't just in the cloud. I had the originals tucked away in my fireproof safe next to my birth certificate and my will. They had no idea. They thought they were still in control. They thought they were still the benefactors of my endless generosity. They thought I was just Claire, the quiet, responsible one who would always be there to bail them out without question. They had no idea the quiet storm that was brewing. The storm I had been preparing for piece by painstaking piece for years. Every screenshot, every bank transfer record, every credit card statement. And now the ultimate piece of evidence. The deed to their very home sitting in my safe. My heart was aching from the Thanksgiving text. But in my gut, a different feeling was growing. A cold, hard resolve. They had pushed me too far. This time, their dismissal wasn't just going to hurt. This time, it was going to have consequences. Consequences they couldn't possibly imagine. Olivia's text followed my parents. Disinvitation as if on cue. I hadn't even had time to fully process the initial shock. My phone buzzed again just a few minutes after the first message. It was from Olivia directly. Hope you understand. You can be intense sometimes. Let's do lunch instead. Intense. The word hung in the air even though it was just pixels on a screen. It hit a nerve. A raw, exposed nerve that had been frayed over years of similar comments. Intense. That was the word she and sometimes even my parents used when I dared to speak my mind. When I voiced a concern. When I asked a reasonable question, when I tried to set a boundary. Intense. It was the same word she'd used when I had very gently, very carefully asked her about repayment for some of the money my parents had given her a few years back. She had just shrugged. A dismissive wave of her hand. Claire, you're so intense about money. It's just money. Relax. She had smiled, her charming smile. And my parents had quickly changed the subject. Intense. It was a weapon. A way to shut me down. To make me feel like I was the problem. Not her endless spending. Not their enabling. Not the mountain of debt. No. It was my intensity. My desire for responsibility. My need for things to be fair. That was the issue. I read her text again. Hope you understand. Of course. She hoped I understood because understanding meant I would quietly accept it. I would fall in line. I would be the good, understanding sister who never caused a fuss. You can be intense sometimes. The ellipsis was a nice touch. A little dramatic pause. As if she was delicately choosing her words. As if she was trying to be kind. But it wasn't kind. It was condescending. It was dismissive. It was a deliberate jab. Let's do lunch instead. A consolation prize. A little bone thrown to the sister who wasn't worthy of Thanksgiving. A way to plate me. To make me feel like I wasn't completely exiled. A performative gesture of sisterly affection. Devoid of any real meaning. My blood ran cold. The hurt deepened. But it was now laced with something sharper. Anger. A quiet, simmering anger that had been building for years. They thought they could just push me aside. They thought they could take everything I had to offer, then tell me I wasn't good enough to sit at their table. They thought they could dismiss my concerns as intensity and expect me to just smile and take it. Not anymore. I felt a switch flip inside me. Something hard and unyielding clicked into place. The victim mentality I'd carried, the deep-seated hurt, it was still there. But it was now overlaid with a powerful resolve. I looked at Olivia's text. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. 100 angry retorts flashed through my mind. 100 ways to express the pain, the betrayal, the sheer disrespect. But I didn't send any of them. Instead, I typed one word. One simple, direct word. Okay. I pressed send. My finger didn't even tremble. The word went out into the digital ether. It was deceptively calm. Deceptively compliant. But the next call I made was not to Olivia. It was not to my parents. Begging them to reconsider. It was not to a friend to vent my frustration. The next call I made was to my lawyer. My hand was steady as I dialed the number. My voice was calm when she answered. Hello. Megan. I said. It's Claire Mason. I need to activate our plan. Megan was sharp. She knew exactly what I meant. We had discussed this possibility months ago when I had first put the house in my name. A contingency plan. A just-in-case scenario. And just in case had arrived. What's the immediate action? She asked. Her voice professional and ready. Thanksgiving. I said. My voice flat. They disinvited me because of Olivia. They think I'm intense. A bitter laugh escaped me. It's time. Understood. Claire, she said. I'll prepare the documents. When do you want to serve them? Christmas, I replied. At their big Christmas dinner. I want to make sure everyone is there. There was a moment of silence on the other. And Megan knew this wasn't just a legal maneuver. It was a statement. A declaration. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Claire? She asked. A hint of caution in her voice. I'm sure, I said. My voice firm. They crossed a line. They took my sacrifice and threw it back in my face. They called me intense for simply wanting respect. It's time they learned what truly intense means. I hung up the phone. My heart was still aching. But the anger had solidified into a cold, quiet power. The victim was done being a victim. It was time for Claire, the intense one, to finally be heard. The weeks leading up to Christmas were a strange mix of calm and anticipation. I didn't engage with my family. My okay to Olivia's text had been the last word I exchanged with them. They didn't try to call me. No follow-up from my parents about the disinvitation. No apology. Or nothing. It was as if I had just vanished from their lives. Replaced by Olivia's perfect Thanksgiving. I focused on work. On myself. I went to the gym. I cooked healthy meals. I took long walks around Seattle. Bundled up against the cold. Watching the ferries cross Puget Sound. My mind, however, was meticulously going over the plan. Every detail. Every possible reaction. Megan, my lawyer. It was efficient. She had the legal papers ready. The lease agreement. The notice of ownership. The formal demands. Everything was carefully worded, leaving no room for misinterpretation. We need a process server, she had explained. Someone official. It will make the delivery undeniable. Agreed. I had said I want it done correctly. No ambiguity. I gave her the date. December 25th. The location. My parents' lakefront house. The specific time around 6 p.m. Right after their big Christmas dinner. When everyone would be gathered. Olivia. Her latest boyfriend. Extended family. Close friends. The whole tableau of their perfect family. I pictured the scene in my mind. The festive decorations. The smell of pine and roasted turkey. The twinkling lights. Olivia. No doubt. Holding court. Basking in the glow of their adoration. And then the knock at the door. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Not of fear, but of a grim satisfaction. It was a necessary evil. A surgical strike. It had to be done. On Christmas Day, I stayed in Seattle. I made myself a quiet dinner. I watched a movie. I didn't call anyone. I didn't want distractions. I needed to keep my focus. My resolve. Around 5:45 p.m. I received a text from Megan. Process server confirmed arrival at target address. Preparing for delivery. My heart hammered in my chest. This was it. The moment I had been planning for. Gathering evidence for 4 years. At 6:05 p.m. Another text. Papers served. Receipt confirmed. I took a deep breath. It was done. I imagined the scene. The polite knock. The process server. A calm, professional figure holding out the envelope. My dad probably answering the door. Expecting another guest or maybe a late delivery. The confusion on his face as he took the official-looking documents and then the realization. A slow dawning horror. The papers stated clause by clause what I now legally owned. Idawaga house. Their home. It was mine. The first key clause. They were no longer homeowners. They were tenants. Tenants in my property. The second key clause. They had 2 choices. Either buy the house from me at current market value, which after my payment was significantly higher than the $500,000 I had covered thanks to the soaring real estate market, or start paying rent. Market rate rent by January 15th. The final devastating clause. Failure to comply with either of these options would result in eviction. Legally? Formally. It was all there in black and white. Unmistakable. I imagined the silence that would fall over their festive dinner table. The way the conversation would stop. The shocked faces. Olivia's probably turning white with disbelief. My parents. Their expressions morphing from confusion to hurt to outright panic. I didn't relish their pain. Not truly. But I relished the truth being laid bare. The consequences of their actions finally catching up to them. The shattering of their carefully constructed illusion of my endless unconditional support. They had pushed me into a corner. They had taken my generosity for weakness. They had dismissed my feelings, my sacrifices, my very presence. They had called me intense. Now they would see what true intensity looked like. It wasn't a sudden outburst. It wasn't a tearful confrontation. It was cold, calculated, and legally binding. It was the quiet strength of someone who had been pushed too far and had finally decided to push back. With all the evidence, all the legal documents, and all the quiet resolve I had built over years of neglect and betrayal, I closed my eyes again. I could almost hear the shocked gasps, the frantic whispers, the dawning realization of what I had done and why. The silence in my Seattle apartment was profound. But it wasn't lonely. It was the quiet hum of power, of control. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was finally in charge of my own story and my own peace. The next morning, I woke up early. The Seattle sky was gray and drizzly as usual. But inside me there was a strange, quiet calm. I knew what was coming. I was ready. I had booked a flight to the Maldives months ago. A trip I had delayed countless times because of family emergencies. A trip I couldn't afford after emptying my accounts. But one I had prepaid and refused to cancel. It was my escape, my planned oasis, and it couldn't have come at a better time. I made myself coffee, packed my last-minute items, and headed to the airport. The lounge was bustling, a calm before the storm. I found a quiet corner, ordered a latte, and settled in. I purposefully left my phone on silent, tucked away in my bag. I wanted to be in control of when I faced the music. As I sipped my latte, watching planes take off, I finally pulled out my phone. It immediately exploded. Notifications, hundreds of them. Missed calls, voicemails, texts from Mom, from Dad, from Olivia, from even some extended family members I rarely heard from. I started with Mom's texts, a barrage of desperate pleas. "Claire, what have you done? Please call me. This is a misunderstanding. You can't do this to us. We're your parents. How could you be so cruel on Christmas Day? Your father is devastated. Olivia is inconsolable. Please, my sweetheart, don't take our home." Dad's less pleading, more enraged. "Claire, this is an outrage. You think you can just march in here and threaten us? You will regret this. I thought you loved us. This is unforgivable. Utterly unforgivable. Call me now." And then Olivia's. A stream of consciousness. A mixture of fury and victimhood. What the hell? "Claire, are you seriously doing this on Christmas? You're ruining everything. My entire life is falling apart because of you. How could you betray us like this after everything we've done for you?" That one made me scoff aloud. "You're just jealous, aren't you, that I'm finally happy? Don't you dare answer this. You selfish monster." Followed by more enraged texts. I read through them all, one by one. My face remained impassive. The words, once so capable of inflicting pain, now felt distant. They were just noise. Their chaos, not mine. I listened to a few voicemails. Mom's voice was shaky, full of tears and accusations. Dad's was booming, a vein-popping kind of anger. Olivia's was a shriek, a wail of indignation. I finished my latte. I felt a profound sense of calm. A deep, steady breath filled my lungs. I opened my messaging app. I typed a single message and sent it to all three of them in a group chat. "You had 6 months to pay the mortgage, to get your finances in order, to appreciate what I did, to invite me to Thanksgiving, to not call me intense when I asked for basic respect." I paused. Then I added, "Time's up." I pressed send. The moment the message went through, their texts and calls intensified. My phone vibrated almost constantly, but I didn't open them. I didn't listen. I put my phone back on silent. I tucked it into my bag. I stood up. My gate was boarding. I gathered my carry-on. As I walked towards the gate, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of their expectations, their demands, their endless need for me to be their savior had lifted. For so long, I had carried their burdens. Their financial irresponsibility, Olivia's endless drama, their emotional neglect disguised as love. I had believed that if I just kept giving, kept sacrificing, kept being the rock, eventually they would see me. They would appreciate me. They would love me truly for who I was. Not for what I could do for them. But that was a fantasy. A cruel trick my own heart had played on me. My family had chosen to disinvite me from Thanksgiving because Olivia wanted to impress her boss. They had called me intense for simply existing as an adult with boundaries. They had, in essence, spit on my monumental sacrifice. And now they were facing the consequences. Not of my cruelty, but of their own choices, their own enabling, their own blind favoritism. I handed my boarding pass to the attendant. The smile I gave her was genuine. As I walked down the jet bridge towards the plane that would take me far, far away from their chaos, I felt a powerful sense of liberation. The hurricane was raging behind me, but I was walking into the quiet eye of the storm. And this time I was safe. I was free. I was finally truly protecting my peace. The flight attendant greeted me. "Welcome aboard, Claire." I settled into my seat by the window. I looked out at the gray Seattle sky and then up at the clear blue beyond the clouds. The journey had begun, and for the first time in my life, it felt like it was truly my journey. The Maldives was everything I needed it to be. Turquoise waters, soft white sand, endless sunshine. I spent my days swimming, reading, and simply existing without the constant pressure of family drama. My phone stayed mostly off or on airplane mode, only checking it briefly for work emails. I ignored the torrent of messages from my family. They were a distant hum, not my reality. It was during one of my daily swims, floating in the warm, clear ocean, that I decided it was time for the next step. I had given them a week to stew. A week to truly understand the gravity of the situation. Now it was time to drop the real bombshell. The one that would truly shatter their carefully constructed world. I sent a short direct email to my parents and Olivia. I CC'd Megan, my lawyer, for good measure. The subject line was simple: Grandma's trust. In the email, I wrote, "Mom, Dad, Olivia, I hope this email finds you well. As you are aware, Grandma always intended for her estate to be divided fairly between her grandchildren with specific provisions for your long-term care. However, after observing Olivia's pattern of financial mismanagement and manipulation, and specifically her continued reliance on your finances, I advised Grandma to update her trust. This was done several months ago, and the new trust is legally binding. The updated trust fund now stipulates that Olivia's portion of the inheritance will be held in a protected fund managed by an independent third-party financial institution. She will receive a fixed monthly allowance for essential living expenses contingent on her participation in financial therapy and demonstrating a clear path towards financial independence. Any large expenses or investments will require approval from the trust administrator. Furthermore, the provisions for your long-term care, previously quite generous, have been adjusted. A significant portion of these funds will now only be released upon a demonstrated need following independent financial assessment. This is to prevent any further exploitation by Olivia, who has for years siphoned off your resources, directly impacting your financial security and mental well-being. I have attached a copy of the updated trust document for your review. Claire. I attached the scanned, notarized document. My lawyer had ensured every I was dotted and every T was crossed. Grandma, bless her pragmatic heart, had been surprisingly receptive to my concerns when I had approached her. She'd always been a shrewd businesswoman, and she saw through Olivia's charming facade far more clearly than my parents ever did. Grandma loved Olivia. Yes. But she also loved financial stability and common sense. When I laid out the evidence of Olivia's chronic debt, her frivolous spending, and the increasing drain on my parents' dwindling resources, Grandma had listened. Really listened. She'd seen how Olivia's emergencies were impacting my parents' ability to save for their own future. And she'd seen how it was hurting me, the one who was always bailing everyone out. Claire, she had said, her voice clear and firm. I always admired your common sense. It's time someone put a stop to this for everyone's sake. She had asked me to connect her with my lawyer. And together, they had quietly, efficiently updated the trust. It was a preemptive strike, a fail-safe against Olivia's ongoing financial predation. And it was a secret I had kept carefully, waiting for the right moment. This was that moment I sent the email. I felt the familiar jolt of adrenaline, but this time it was mixed with a sense of profound justice. This wasn't about punishment. It was about exposing the truth. It was about breaking a cycle that had plagued my family for decades. I imagined my parents reading that email. The initial shock of the house situation would be compounded by this. Olivia's manipulation. Her relentless siphoning of their money now laid bare, not just by my records, but by Grandma's own actions. It wasn't me saying Olivia was bad. It was Grandma. And Grandma's word, especially on financial matters, was gospel. For the first time, Mom and Dad would begin to see their daughter, Olivia, not as a charming, free-spirited star, but as a manipulative, financially destructive force. They would begin to see me not just as a savior who silently fixed their problems, but as the daughter who had tried in my own way to protect them, to protect their future, to protect their sanity. The realization would be painful, heartbreaking even, but it was a necessary pain. A pain that would finally, hopefully open their eyes. I closed my laptop. The sun was setting over the Indian Ocean, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and purple. A gentle breeze rustled the palm trees. The truth was out. The manipulation was exposed. The foundation of their dysfunctional dynamic was cracking. And the intense one, was finally forcing them to confront it. Not with anger, but with cold, hard facts and the undeniable, legally binding will of their own mother. My work here was done. For now, I had planted the seeds of change. Now I would wait for them to sprout, and perhaps for the first time for my parents to truly understand the depth of Olivia's chaos and the true meaning of my love. A love that sometimes had to be tough, had to be uncompromising, had to demand accountability. The sun dipped below the horizon. The sky darkened. But a new dawn, I hoped, was on its way for my family. Weeks later, I returned to Seattle. The crisp, clean air of the Pacific Northwest felt strangely comforting after the tropical humidity of the mall days. I had given my family time. Time to process the legal papers. Time to digest the news about Grandma's trust. Time to let the fallout settle. My phone, which I had kept on silent for the entire trip, it was still quiet. No more desperate pleas. No more enraged texts. The storm had passed, leaving behind an eerie silence. I spent a few days settling back into my apartment, catching up on work, and reconnecting with friends. I felt lighter, clearer. The emotional weight that had clung to me for so long had finally begun to dissipate. Then came the text from my mom. Simple. Direct. Can we talk? Please? Just us. I paused before replying. Not out of hesitation, but out of a need to be intentional. I wasn't going into this unprepared. Yes. I texted Rock at my place. Saturday. 10 a.m. I wanted the meeting on my terms and my space. The power dynamic had shifted, and I needed to reinforce that. Saturday morning arrived. Gray and overcast. I made fresh coffee, set out some water, and waited. At precisely 10 a.m., there was a tentative knock on my door. I opened it. My parents looked drained. Truly drained. Mom's usually vibrant hair seemed duller. Her eyes shadowed. Dad, who always carried himself with an air of confident authority, it looked slumped. His shoulders stooped. And then there was Olivia. She was stripped of her usual glamour. No designer clothes. No perfectly styled hair. She wore a simple sweater and jeans. Her face pale and drawn. She sat small on my couch, looking down at her hands, avoiding my gaze. The usual sparkle in her eyes was gone, replaced by a dull, almost defeated look. The silence was thick, heavy with unspoken words. I poured them coffee, offered water. No one spoke. Finally, Mom cleared her throat. Her voice was raspy. Claire, we need to talk. Yes, we do, I said. My voice calm and steady. I sat in the armchair opposite them, making sure I wasn't physically boxed in. Let's be direct. No accusations. No blame. Just facts. And what we're going to do next. I looked at each of them. My gaze lingered on Olivia for a moment, but she still wouldn't meet my eyes. First, The house. I began. You have two options. You either buy it from me at market value or you start paying market rate rent by January 15th. We are already past that date. So the rent is due now. Retroactive to the 15th. Dad finally looked up, his face etched with pain. Claire, we don't have that kind of money. You know that. That's why you have a second option. I continued, ignoring his interjection. Which is to downsize to a smaller house. A less expensive one. One that you can actually afford, or that I can finance for you with a reasonable rent that fits your current income. Mom let out a small sob. Our home. It hasn't been your home financially for a long time. Mom, I said gently but firmly. It's been a burden. One I carried. And now it's mine legally. This isn't about punishment. It's about reality and about not repeating past mistakes. Then I shifted to the second point. Dad. Your accounting firm. For years, you've talked about getting it off the ground, but you've never truly committed. Olivia's needs. Mom's expectations. They've always taken priority. I believe in you. Dad. I always have. So, my second offer is this. I will help you. I will invest in your firm. I will provide a clear business plan, marketing support, and the capital you need to succeed. But only if you are fully committed. No more excuses. No more half-hearted attempts. Dad looked stunned. His eyes, for the first time, showed a flicker of something besides defeat. Hope. Finally, I turned my attention to Olivia. She still hadn't looked at me. Olivia, I said, my voice soft but unwavering. Your portion of Grandma's trust is now managed. You know the terms. A fixed allowance contingent on financial therapy. Your patterns of spending and manipulation have not only hurt you, but they have decimated Mom and Dad's savings and almost cost them their home. This isn't sustainable. It's not healthy for any of us. Olivia finally lifted her head. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She looked utterly broken. What do you want from me? Claire, she whispered. Her voice barely audible. I want you to get help, I said, looking her directly in the eye. My third proposal is this. You enroll in a reputable financial therapy program, a comprehensive one, and you commit to it fully. No half measures. No excuses. I will pay for it. But you have to do the work. You have to face your issues head on. The silence stretched. My parents looked at each other, then at Olivia, then back at me. The weight of my words hung in the air. These weren't demands. Not really. They were choices. Choices that would finally bring accountability, responsibility, and a chance for genuine healing. These are your options, I concluded. 3 paths forward. No more enabling. No more quiet resentment. No more walking on eggshells. We either move forward together with honesty and clear boundaries, or we don't. I looked at them, my heart aching, but my resolve firm. It was their turn to decide. The ball was in their court. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like the game was finally being played on a level field. The silence in my living room was deafening. My parents exchanged glances. A lifetime of unspoken conversations passing between them. Olivia sat hunched, her gaze fixed on the coffee table. I waited. I had laid out my terms, offered solutions, and now the decision was theirs. I was prepared for any outcome, even if it meant stepping away from them entirely. My peace was paramount. Then my dad sighed. A deep, rattling sound that seemed to release years of suppressed stress. He looked at my mom, and for the first time I saw a genuine understanding in his eyes. Not just weary resignation. "Claire's right, Martha," he said, his voice surprisingly firm. "We can't keep living like this. We almost lost everything." He turned to me. "The house. A smaller one. We'll find a smaller place. Something we can manage." My mom's eyes welled up. But this time, it wasn't just sadness. There was a glimmer of acceptance. "And your father's firm," she added, looking at Dad. "He's always wanted that. He deserves a real chance." She looked at me. We agreed to downsize. Then all eyes turned to Olivia. She slowly, hesitantly lifted her head. Her eyes met mine. There was no anger there anymore. No defiance. Just a raw, exposed vulnerability I had never seen before. I don't want to keep messing things up," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm tired of self. Of everything." She swallowed hard. "I'll go to therapy. Claire. The financial therapy. I'll do whatever it takes." To my shock, they agreed. All of it. A smaller house. Dad's business finally getting the serious attention it deserved. And Olivia entering treatment. It wasn't just a reluctant agreement. It felt like a collective sigh of relief. Like the weight of their dysfunctional patterns had finally become too heavy to bear. Mom slowly stood up. She walked towards me, her movements hesitant. I braced myself, expecting another plea. Another manipulation disguised as affection. But then she just reached out. Her hands gently cupped my face. Her eyes, still teary, looked into mine with a depth I hadn't felt since I was a small child. "Oh, Claire," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And then, for the first time in my adult life, she hugged me without conditions. It wasn't a hurried pat on the back. It wasn't a hug that felt like a transaction. It was a long, tight embrace. A hug filled with genuine remorse. with raw understanding, and with a depth of unconditional love I had always yearned for. I felt the tension drain from my shoulders. I felt years of hurt begin to melt away. I hugged her back tightly, tears finally streaming down my face. It wasn't a magic fix. It wasn't an instant erasure of all the pain. But it was a beginning. A real, honest beginning. Over the next few months, things slowly, painstakingly began to change. My parents moved into a charming much smaller home a few towns over. It was cozy, manageable, and free of the crushing financial burden the lakefront house had become. Dad threw himself into his accounting firm with a newfound vigor. And with my strategic investment and guidance, it began to thrive. He finally felt a sense of purpose again. Olivia started her financial therapy. It was difficult for her. I knew there were relapses, moments of frustration, but she stuck with it. She started to unpack years of inherited behaviors of using money and charm to control situations. We had long, difficult conversations, but they were honest conversations for the first time. We were slowly, tentatively building a new kind of relationship, one based on truth, not on a gilded facade. My own life, too, transformed. I felt a peace I had never known. The constant anxiety, the feeling of always being on alert, always waiting for the next crisis, finally faded. My relationships with my parents and Olivia were still a work in progress. But they were no longer defined by my victimization. They were defined by new boundaries, mutual respect, and a genuine effort towards understanding. I still had my moments of hurt. The scars of neglect don't just vanish. But I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor. And I had learned a powerful truth. If you've ever been told you're too much for standing up, for having boundaries, for demanding respect, remember this. Boundaries are not betrayal. They are acts of self-preservation. They are declarations of your worth. Never apologize for protecting your peace. If this story touched you, please subscribe to the channel and share this video. It helps me grow better and reminds others that their voice, their experience, and their boundaries are valid. You are not alone, and you deserve to be seen, to be heard, and to be loved unconditionally.